The next is tellability. For traditional storytelling in person, do the words tell the story? How can you make your audience understand the story through voice and movement? Really connecting to those characters and what do those characters look like and what do they sound like? And really creating those. And not every character is the same. Um, I tell the students that you're not telling the story, you're becoming the story and you're becoming the characters. And how does that look to you? How are you going to make each one look and sound different? Think about the movements and the gestures you would use to tell the story clearly. Will you have to change your voice to show that different character is speaking? Will you be able to do that? Finding dialects or changing your tone, changing your pitch, finding those nuances that you can really help to create that character. Will you have to add anything to the story or leave anything out to make it clearer to your audience? It's okay to change the wording of a story, but don't change the outline. So everything does not have to be word for word. This is not necessary. Storytelling is a little bit more lenient in that it's not a script per se. Once you kind of understand the outline, now, if you're doing something like Dr. Seuss, you may want to reconsider that. And I do have an example of a Dr. Seuss story. But unless it's a really well-known story, that the wording is specific, it does not have to be word for word. So just getting that basic outline across. For film storytelling, what form of media will best help you tell the story to your intended audience? This is also a great project for those students that may not be comfortable performing. Like if you've had students not really excited about performing in front of others, I've seen so many students come alive during this project. I have one that now wants to be a voice actor because he was able to just focus on the voice acting of it. And he showed pictures of the storybook and focused on creating just the vocalization of the characters. And I told him that was completely fine. Will you be able to tell the story smoothly while manipulating your materials? So if you're using any kind of props, practicing with those, are they purposeful? Does it help connect your audience to the story? Will using media force you to change the story in some way, or how? So if it's going to take away from the story, think about what you're doing. And then I'll always give them hints and tricks for memorizing and learning the story. Read the story to yourself a few times, thinking about how it all fits together. Read it out loud a few times, thinking about what kinds of expression and voice changes you might use, as well as any dramatic gestures. So trying different voices for different characters, trying different postures and external traits to help you connect to the character. I also teach them this with monologue work. Write it or type it out so that you will have a copy to practice from, and it always helps with memorization, is if you write out your entire story. I personally like to handwrite it myself, but typing also does help to memorize it. Having a clear outline. So once you get your outline chosen, make sure you're identifying those dramatic structure elements. I have them first outline the beginning, middle, and the end, and then sectioning that off with your main events and actions and themes and the dramatic structure. And then practice, and practice a little bit at a time. Maybe getting the beginning memorized and then moving on to the middle and then moving on to the end so that you can add on each section and that you will have, at the end, a cohesive story. And then tell the story out loud and have fun. Tell it to your classmates. Do peer review. Tell it to your friends, your family, and see their reaction to it. If you're supposed to be getting a laugh at a certain point and they're not laughing, maybe you're going to have to look at changing some things. So really think about how you're going to tell your story. And then performance tips. Relax, have fun. Um, Storytelling, it's going to feel a little awkward, is what I tell my students. It's unnatural. You're creating these sometimes fantasy characters. So just let your body flow into creating these different characters and commit to it. I tell them, you're entertaining children. You're entertaining, a 5 or 6 year old. If you don't commit, they're not going to be interested in what you're doing. So you have to think outside the box. You have to have so much more energy than you may have in a normal character, because these have got to be over the top. And that's when you're going to get the reaction. That's when you're going to get the laughter. And make every movement have purpose. Don't pace if it's not called for. Make every movement part of the story and make them big, make them bold. But too much movement can sometimes take away from what you're saying. And then, unlike with theater and monologue work, make eye contact with your audience. With storytelling, your audience is your focal point. So make sure you're engaging your entire audience and you're looking at them, making them become part of the story. If eye contact is something that makes you feel uncomfortable, one thing I'd suggest them do is look at the tips of noses. And then speak clearly and distinctly. Don't rush, don't speak too slowly. Make sure that your articulation is understood, that you are using diction, inflecting those main points, and having energy and projection in your speech. And then record yourself to see how you sound. Maybe even do that before you start the physicality of it, just to see that you're hitting all the main points that you want to hit vocally.